Welcome back, or if you're new, welcome. My name is Katie. Today I will be talking about the murder of Lisa Ann French. This is also known as the Halloween murder. Just a trigger warning, this is about a 9-year-old little girl. So if that is something that bothers you, please skip this video and I will see you next week. So, this case was monumental as it changed the way many Wisconsin towns and cities trick or treat and was also responsible for one of the laws enacted in Wisconsin. Lisa Ann French was born June 2nd, 1964, in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, to her parents Alan and Mary Ann. She lived in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin with her mother, stepfather Bruce, and newborn half-brother. Lisa was a fourth grader at Chegwin Elementary School and a member of the Girl Scouts. Lisa left her home around 5:45 p.m. on Halloween night, dressed as a hobo, wearing a black felt hat, a green parka, jeans with blue masking tape, and dotted freckles on her cheeks. Lisa and her friend Ann Parker had originally made plans to go to an outdoor Halloween party at Pumpkin Place on East Bank Street, where parents from the neighborhood were hosting an outdoor party for kids. There had been reports around the country of poisoned candy and razor blades left in apples. So the community wanted to provide a safe place for children to celebrate. However, Anne had misbehaved that day, and at the last minute she got grounded and was unable to join Lisa. This left Lisa to trick or treat by herself. It's been said that Anne still lives with guilt and wonders how things might have turned out differently if she had been able to go with Lisa that night, which is so sad. I couldn't even imagine, after hearing this story, like being the person that was supposed to go with her so she wasn't alone, so this didn't happen to her. I would live with guilt the rest of my life too. It's very sad. It was reported that Lisa stopped for candy at a classmate's house and the house of one of her teachers before she made her way to Gerald Turner's house, which was just a half a block away from where Lisa lived with her mom. At the time of Lisa's death, Gerald Turner lived with his girlfriend, Arlene Penn, and their infant child. Lisa and Gerald had known each other before the incident, as Gerald was a family friend and had previously rented the other side of a duplex that Lisa and her family had lived in. Lisa often spent time with Gerald and Arlene's infant child and would often visit Gerald to show him new things she had gotten or to just sit and talk with him. On the day of Lisa's murder, she was very excited to show Gerald her hobo costume, which is so, so sad. She trusted him and felt comfortable with him. He was a friend to her, and he's just a piece of shit. That's all I have to say. According to Gerald's confession, on October 31st, 1973, Lisa rang his doorbell, said trick or treat, and walked through his open doorway with her candy bag open as Gerald came to the door. Gerald and Lisa began to talk about candy, and at some point, Gerald lured Lisa into his bedroom where he sexually assaulted her and murdered her. Gerald said that after the sexual assault, Lisa wasn't breathing. He then attempted to revive her, but was interrupted when his girlfriend Arlene arrived home. Arlene, who had been at the party Lisa was supposed to attend, said that she arrived home around 7 p.m. Gerald was wearing a bathrobe and claimed multiple times that he was sick. Arlene said that Gerald made several trips to the bedroom to lie down. In Gerald's confession, he said that Lisa's body was, at the time, in the bathroom next to the bedroom. After Arlene left the residence at around 8 o'clock p.m. to visit her mother, Gerald stuffed Lisa's body and clothes into separate bags and drove her body to Taycheedah, Wisconsin, where he dumped her body in a farm field off Macabre Road. In an effort to avoid leaving evidence of fingerprints on Lisa's body, and at the crime scene, Gerald wore socks on his hands when moving the body. He also wiped down Lisa's shoes and the zipper of her parka. Lisa's mother, Mary Ann, started to grow worried about Lisa's whereabouts when she did not return home at her 7 p.m. curfew. By 10 p.m., a search party had formed and began looking for the young girl. A county-wide search for the missing girl was conducted, which included over 5,000 volunteers, police officers, the United States National Guard, and some of her fellow Girl Scouts. Gas stations had offered 25 gallons of gas free to anyone using a vehicle to help search for Lisa. About 2.5 days into the search, a farmer named Gerald Braun, this is the good Gerald, not the bad Gerald, was returning home in his tractor when he discovered two brown plastic bags behind a barbed wire fence just off of Highway 49 in Fond du Lac. The farmer called the police, who opened the bags, one containing Lisa's nude, lifeless body, the other containing the clothing from her Halloween costume. An autopsy performed on Lisa's body had revealed that Lisa had died from asphyxiation, although there were signs of circulatory shock from the sexual trauma that she endured. So sad. I literally can't even imagine what was going through this little girl's head. Like, you know, like she just trusted him. And then he does this to her? What a sick fuck. Lisa's funeral was held on November 6, 1973 at Emmanuel Trinity Lutheran Church in Fond du Lac. On November 8, 1973, the Chamber of Commerce of Fond du Lac posted a $10,000 reward for the capture of Lisa Ann French's killer. Gerald was made a suspect of the murder early in the investigation by Fond du Lac law enforcement because neighbors had seen Lisa visiting his house the night she disappeared. But it took 9 months of questioning and testing until he confessed on August 8, 1974, to the rape and murder of Lisa. Later during his trial, he recanted his confession, saying that he never confessed and he just signed the statement because he was sick and tired of being harassed by police. During the 9 months of scrutiny from police, he was brought in by law enforcement to perform a polygraph test. The results of the test came back inconclusive, and Gerald declined to participate in a second test. Police had also collected body hair and bedsheet fiber samples from Gerald, which were positively matched to samples on Lisa's body and her clothing. Gerald had said in his 1974 confession that when he saw Lisa in his doorway, he was, quote, highly sexually motivated. He said he then proceeded to lead her into his bedroom where he undressed her and performed anal intercourse on her. Gerald then said that he noticed that Lisa had stopped breathing after the sexual assault, and he put his head over her chest and noticed that her heart was still beating and attempted to revive her by placing his hands over her chest and then listening to her chest again until he said Arlene had drove up the driveway to the house. Gerald Turner was subsequently taken into police custody on August 9, 1974, and was convicted on February 4, 1975, by a jury on the charges of second-degree murder, enticing a child for immoral purposes, and acts of sexual perversion, and was sentenced to 38 years and 6 months in prison. It was said that Gerald had shown no remorse at all. Gerald was first paroled on October 13, 1992 for good behavior. No. After only serving 17 years and 8 months of his sentence at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. Gerald's 1992 parole sparked multiple community protests and public outrage amongst Lisa's relatives and residents of Milwaukee, which was where he was living in a halfway house during his parole. This prompted lawmakers to create the Sexual Predator Law, Wisconsin Chapter 980, named Turner's Law, which was approved on May 26, 1994 by Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson. This law allows criminals who have been paroled or released from their prison sentences to be detained in mental institutions if they are deemed to have a substantial probability of committing another crime. They literally named a law after this sick bastard. Gerald was sent back to prison on November 23, 1993, after a Department of Corrections appeal ruled that they had miscalculated his mandatory parole release from his good behavior. On January 29, 1998, after a 4-day trial, a jury on Gerald's parole hearing ruled that Gerald was not a violent sexual predator, meaning that he could not be held at a treatment center under the law named after him, Turner's Law, despite testimony from a 15-year-old, a former girlfriend, and two of his former wives that said Gerald beat them when they refused to have sex with him, and then he would rape them. In July 1998, a judge ruled against an unsuccessful attempt to revoke his parole after a June incident in which Gerald had shouted and waved a butcher knife at his caseworker while at his halfway home, although a psychiatrist ruled him to still be a dangerous individual. Gerald had filed a complaint on the waste management of Madison for the company refusing to hire him due to his criminal record. Gerald and the company reached an undisclosed statement where they were required to hire Gerald due to a former Wisconsin law not allowing companies to consider criminal convictions when hiring former felons unless the crime is substantially related to the applying job, which the waste management company argued that he could not be hired since they had 15 tours with children during the previous school year and that he would have access to dangerous materials and chemicals. Following Gerald's complaint against the waste company, the Wisconsin State Assembly passed a bill on October 28, 1999, in a vote of 63 to 33, which revoked the original law that prohibited job discrimination based on a felon's criminal record, meaning that employers could then rightfully refuse to hire convicted felons on the basis of their criminal record without further complaints. Gerald was returned to prison for 15 additional years after violating his parole in 2003 when authorities found pornographic images of children on a computer as well as sexually explicit videos in magazines that were discovered in his possession. Gerald, in an undated letter he wrote to Lisa after her death, detailed the events that took place during their encounter. Part of the letter reads, quote, "I doubt that I could ever fully realize the terror you experienced at my hands. I can still see you standing in the doorway with that felt hat beaming at having recognized me. Then I see the delight in your eyes turn to fear as I close the door behind you. The rest of my life I will have to live with what I did to you. On that night I became a monster. I do swear to you on my life I will never harm another child." Gerald had at one time suggested that due to him committing the crimes on Halloween, he had received more significance for the crime and his case, once quoting, "If it had happened on some other day, like Valentine's Day, nobody would give a damn." Like, yeah, dude. You got it worse because it was Halloween. Like, fuck off. I can't with this guy. I really can't. After being returned to prison to serve 15 and a half years for violating his parole in 2003, Gerald was scheduled to be mandatorily released fully from his extended prison sentence at Racine Correctional Institution without any parole restrictions on February 1st, 2018. Gerald's impending release caused Lisa Ann French's mother to create an online petition in an effort to keep Gerald incarcerated in a mental treatment facility. As of 2021, the petition has received over 34,000 signatures with over 9,000 signatures from Wisconsin residents. The Wisconsin Department of Justice filed a legal petition on January 26, 2018, prior to his mandatory prison release, to make the case that Gerald should be detained under Wisconsin Chapter 980. Gerald was then transported to a facility in Juneau County temporarily while awaiting a scheduled hearing on April 6, 2018, to determine if Gerald was a violent sex offender and could be held at a treatment facility permanently. The scheduled April 6 hearing was postponed following Circuit Court Judge Robert Wirtz ordering a transfer of the proceedings of its original setting of Fond du Lac County to Dane County, Wisconsin. This move was the result of Gerald's defense attorney persuading Wirtz to move the hearing by arguing that Gerald had lived in a Madison halfway home during his second parole before he was sent back to prison. Wisconsin's Department of Justice then proceeded to appeal the circuit judge's decision to move the case to Dane County, as the Department of Justice argued that the hearing should take place where the crime occurred. As the gap between each hearing lengthened, a spokesperson for the Department of Justice stated that there was no timeline for when a final decision on Gerald's status was to be made, as Gerald had currently remained at Sand Ridge Secure Treatment Center in Mauston, Wisconsin. In 2019, a Wisconsin appellate court irrevocably ruled that Gerald was to be tried again in Fond du Lac County, overriding the circuit court judge's decision and ruling he had to be tried in Fond du Lac County. The proceedings, however, were postponed again due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was most recently reported that Gerald was set to have his status tried again in court on October 29, 2020, 2 days before the 47th anniversary of the murder of Lisa. On February 23, 2022, Judge Paul, I don't know how to say your name, so I'm not even going to try. It's a judge named Paul, though. Ultimately denied Gerald's release, ruling to condemn Gerald to residency at a high-security mental health facility. 74-year-old Gerald Turner currently remains at Sand Ridge Secure Treatment Center in Mauston, Wisconsin. To this day, many communities in Wisconsin still hold trick-or-treating during daylight hours instead of at nighttime because of the murder of Lisa Ann French. What a sad case, right? It breaks my heart, to be honest. Just the thought, I know I've said this like 6 times, but like she trusted him. He was a friend to her. By the way, he was 25. I forgot to mention that. He was 25 at the time of the murder. So, I mean, she's 9 years old. He's 25. She probably thought he was like, like a big brother. But it's just like she trusted him. He was her friend. She was so excited to show him her costume, her Halloween costume. She's a little cute little hobo. It's so sad. I can't imagine what was going through her head during this. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? I want to know what you guys think. If you've heard of this case, if you knew about Turner's Law, or kind of like why trick-or-treating happens during daylight hours. I think it's kind of like going back to later at nighttime, like getting darker, but I know that this was like a really big reason behind doing it during the day. I know for a while they were doing trick-or-treating on like a Sunday, and it was like noon to 3. Like, that's so crazy to me because you think like Halloween trick-or-treating, it's supposed to be at night, it's supposed to be scary, but then shit like this happens. And fucking Gerald Turner ruined it for everyone. So I hope he sees this. I hope so. I'm gonna go to Sand Ridge and show him this video. Be like, leave 5 stars on my podcast, bitch. He's just sick. I hope he stays in there forever. I hope he dies a terrible death. I hope she haunts him. That's all I have to say about him. But yeah, what do you guys think of this? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Bye!